macro and micro alternation. Another way of using multiple languages in a bilingual education program is using macro and micro alternation between the languages. Now let us see what is macro alternation. Macro alternation would mean that the subjects are divided in terms of the languages in which they will be taught. So when you are introducing a subject, there is one dominant language in which that subject has to be taught. Having said that, this does not mean that the other language that has been decided to be taught in the school does not enter the classroom. The teacher and the students, as they feel fit, would use the other language also. However, the language has to be controlled carefully so that the subject in which a language has been assigned, that remains the dominant language of the subject. However, one has to be careful that other language might enter the space of the teaching and learning. Now, let me remind you of a similar situation that we talked about, strict separation of the languages in terms of the subjects that they would be used in. In that kind of scenario, the other language was not allowed to enter the classrooms at all. Over here, the difference is that there is one dominant language, but you do allow the second language to enter the classroom, albeit in smaller doses. So this emphasizes the bilingualism of the context itself. Another way to do it is by using micro-alternation of languages in education. So what happens in micro-alternation is that you have one dominant language, again, in which a subject is being taught, yet you are allowed to actually use certain aspects of the other language in discussing the subject. So you might have a subject, for instance, in English, but the children might be allowed to do project work, for instance, in Urdu or any other language. So this micro-alternation would mean that within the instruction, within the teaching learning situation, you allow both languages to sort of be there. However, there will still be one dominant language that will be there. So this has been criticized because at times this leads to very frequent code switching, and too much code switching within classroom can actually hamper the children from learning the academic register or the academic language of that subject. So we can say, of course, that this is very close to the bilingual practices in the socio-cultural context, but one needs to keep in mind that in academic scenarios, one has to carefully sort of manage the languages that one is using. So if you choose to sort of bring in micro-alternation of languages, then one has to carefully handle it with an understanding of why we are doing it, when other language has to be allowed, and this can be flexible, and this is much more flexible than as we talked about macro alternation, yet this has to be handled with care. This is more efficient because somehow it is more spontaneous than it is not. But still, having said that, this can be carefully planned, so the teacher, when she makes the plan for the class, can actually anticipate at what points she might like to or he might like to introduce the other language or allow the other language to be a part of the discourse, and exactly why. So the benefits of micro alternation will be mitigated, that is, they will become lesser if it is not carefully planned.